could be us. So back to what I was saying. Could be us.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching. You're watching Diadash 2.0. This is my backup channel from my Diadash, which is still going to be up, but it's on its last strike for censorship. So I also started a BIT CHUTE account, and just so my content stays up. This information is important because everyone is getting all the ones who are still asleep, because those who know better know that these so-called holidays, that's just a play on words. These so-called holy days are not very holy at all. They have a dark origin, and I know people don't like to talk about it. I mean, I was deceived myself for many years, so we've all were raised with it, right? And then a few years ago, I started looking into it and just realizing that it's a pagan tradition. It's definitely something that is worshiping the creation and not the creator. May it be a character, may it be a tree. I mean, I go to the cafe nearby and they literally made an altar for this tree. I'm like, talk about being the ultimate tree huggers. And for those who try to say it's so holy and it has to do with Jesus, this and that, no way, because you got atheists all about it too. It's all about having a good time. People do not care about, I mean, look, I can't even do a vid without sirens going off, all these indications that the world is in turmoil, but yet people want to just get down and have their party. And so your buddy there, Santa Claus, has a secret. Exactly, because in the Western world, let's just say, everything, it's like beyond the curtain veil, the iron curtain or whatever, everything's flipped, because overseas, like, they know better, because they have their parades, and they know that Santa, or another name for him is Saturn, thus the festival in his honor, Saturnalia. And I'm starting to find even more connections, so I'm going to read from like a really great source, but it's so long, so I'm just setting it up, and if I have to do a part 2, I'll do a part 2, totally fine. I'm doing this in between my crazy day, right, on lunch break here. But yeah, because like in Germany and stuff, like, did you know? And you got the cross of Christianity. And so Christianity has been a religion of conquest. They stole a lot of lands, a lot of atrocities happened, and people were forced. It wasn't like an organic thing with a lot of our ancestors. But literally in Germany, like, they have this parade where they'll literally like walk by. Look, I mean, they know what it is and they're down with it. At least like come out and say what it is. These kids are so desensitized, and you got the fire. There's always like a fire that needs to be had. So goes back to, the Celtic lore, and just so many connections. So people don't understand, like, because, these kids nowadays, they're like worse than ever, more wicked, more self-absorbed, and yet everybody gets a present. Everybody still gets rewarded, right? They forgot that Krampus is supposed to come and beat your butt and take you all the way down. What about Krampus? So over here, I mean, straight up lying to the children. Straight up lying, like trying to make evil, sound good. Making these kids love things that are really like, the origin was based on their demise, their demise. But there's nothing new under the sun, guys, nothing new, but over here, he's so nice and jolly. He must be on retirement, right? He got fat, is that what it is? Because kind of looks like this outfit, right? And in modern tradition, the science, even in these movies, they're starting to come out and say like science and magic are one and the same. It's all crazy, right? And when you're into astronomy, You know, the people were like, yes, the earth is a sphere. It's a ball. It has to be balls. Balls. I love balls. Just come out and say you love balls. Really, because you start going into all of this stuff, you start to see a lot of these weird merging of these concepts. You know, really not realizing Mars, Pluto. Why besides so-called Earth, there's all these planets which are nothing but wandering stars, which that's what planet means, wandering star. And like it'll be bright and stuff like that. So I guess that's where they get the points from. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the 8-pointed star. So definitely goes, the polar configuration, Saturn, Venus, and Mars. So yeah, it says the Babylonian star of Isha. A lot of this stuff is so ancient, way before your Copernicus and all that. And where do you think they got all this stuff from? This stuff is so ancient, right? He's also depicted, I believe, as the Grim Reaper also in Roman mythology. So they have a lot of different names. And I wanted to, I got this from this really interesting video. I'll put this video up. I don't agree with everything he says because he tries to say Noah is from the line of the fallen angels. Like, he needs to read the book of Enoch, because Noah, yeah, he was white in color, so like his father was like, oh my gosh, like thinking he was one of the fallen, but the Most High assured him that wasn't the case. Or so I have to read the story again, but he got word that wasn't the case or whatever. But yeah, we are all descended from Noah. May it be him. A lot of them say, we could be an intimate mixed. Some of us can be a little Shem, a little Ham, little this, little that, because there's been so many blending. But he put up a lot of interesting points, so I'm going to X myself out for a minute so I can read some things to you and just show you what I seen. And because I was making the connections with the swirl, guys, with this hypnos, because in some of my vids, because you see the swirl everywhere in movies, mainstream stuff, right? Target. So I guess there's like many names for these entities. Even Morpheus too, because I was making connections how in the Matrix, because you look up the name Morpheus and then you find out that's where they get the name from morphine, that he had the red and blue pill, and he was literally wanting people to go to sleep, and that, hypnos, because you got this spiral. Oops, wrong one. I was trying to click this one, but yeah. So there's a lot of depictions even in these video games, right? I guess they have like statues of his head, bronze head of Hypnos, 1st to 2nd century. So really, really interesting. And then when this guy was going, I'll let you just stop at where he put up very, very interesting pictures.
As evidence, linguists have long noted the similarity of the Phoenician language to ancient Gaelic, the Celtic language of Scotland and Ireland. The 16th century Jesuit historian Michael Alford noted that Ireland's pagan origins run parallel to that of the Eastern Mediterranean. Him and other historians until today state that the pre-Christian Gaels worshipped a god to whom they offered burnt sacrifices and called Bel, which is strikingly similar to the god of the Phoenicians, the Canaanite Baal. In 1707, the Scottish writer Martin Martin wrote that another god of the Britons was Belus, or Belinus, which seems to have been the Assyrian god Bel or Belus, and probably from this pagan deity comes the Scots term of Belton. While some 21st century historians now view this association between one of Ireland's indigenous gods and the Canaanite.
It was sticking on me. I'm trying to go back because, of course, it's sticking, because I was trying to do full screen. Yeah, let's see if it'll let me do it. Let me go back, because you see the swirls. Oh, now it goes to the full screen when I'm done with my... I'll let it figure itself out. It's very, very confusing. But just to show you that the Celts, because they were doing, he was doing a really great connection, showing how a lot of the people who migrated here came from North Africa, and Berber culture, very similar to the people in Ireland, how a lot of their customs and the entities and the so-called gods that started permeate in these regions were very, very similar. So my ancestors came from the Azores over here, but people of course migrated this way, migrated down here from North Africa. This would have been the quickest way. And you got all these regions, and they say, they all have connections to Saudi Arabia even. So this video was very good, but it was at these pictures, as I'm sure you've noticed, that you've seen these swirls here that I put up. So in this image, guys, you got like these swirly swirls, so it pretty much goes counterclockwise all the way to the middle. I'm noticing that. And so also an association, so this could be the same character, just different names, right, across the cultures. So very interesting, like the different features. So that could be Santa Claus too, right? So you got these angel, this wing figure. Of course, the god of all gods, he doesn't have wings, guys, only like the angels, the fallen angels and whatnot, right? We're not supposed to worship these lesser deities. But then you see he got the swirl right there. I was literally going through so many pictures trying to put it up, could not find it. That's why I'm going to put the link to this vid below, because I appreciate him putting this up. Now, we all know about this crazy story with this car going through the marching band. I mean, that was pretty surreal. That happened on, what was it, Sunday? 5 dead. 40 plus hurt after driver rams through parade. And this happened in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And yeah, made a lot of connections to how, they're putting everyone to sleep, drugging everyone. Pretty much, Saturn comes in many forms, very sad story that was. But are we surprised? Because when you worship these entities, they require blood sacrifice. They require death. This stuff is no joke. You try to tell people, like, that's what sets them apart. I guess, there's different depictions here. Is that like a female one? Yeah, is a gas giant. So there's different depictions. Is this like the image like in the Bible, the woman riding the beast, also they worship the calf in the Old Testament. This was a huge abomination, a huge spit in the face of the King of Kings, the God of all gods. And, they're all about these fires and these bonfires, and it comes in different forms because, even during this ritual, this is in Providence, Rhode Island, the water fire, says a Providence security officer stabbed. There's always some type of like really creepy stuff going on around these times. When are people going to wake up that nothing has changed? So I'm going to read a little bit from this. This was really, really, this is a really good source, guys. The Atlantic Religion, the Prisca Theologia of European Paganism. So it's going to show how it's traveled down through these different areas, and that he has different names. Also, Bill, the origin of Bill, really interesting. So we'll see what we can get through, and if I have to do a part 2, that's great, because I totally learned a lot just reading a little bit of this last night. Okay, and so this is not the whole piece of work, but a sample, and there's like many pages that are uploaded, so we can see what we can get through. But this is called Beltane Not a Fire Festival, April 26, 2015. The Beltane flower, Catha, Paul Ostrich, Marsh Marigold, Louis Bowie, Beltane emerging in Curragh pools at Beltane. The ancient Atlantic Gaelic seasonal festival of Beltane or Bodin, usually ascribed to the 1st May or May 12th, celebrates the opening of summer and the burgeoning growth and fertility of nature. Before the second half of the 19th century, it was a great cause for public and domestic celebrations and observances in many rural districts of Ireland, Scotland, and the Isle of Man, as well as many districts in Wales and England. Seemingly coming down from prehistory, these seasonal May celebrations were characterized by hilltop bonfires, cattle seining prior to transhumance to the summer pasturage, and the celebration of foliage, flowers, fertility, and water through various customary and superstitious observances. And people think that's so unrelated to Christmas, but just think about being around the fireplace with the stockings. They have fire in one form or another, right? They have to have their flowers. Of course, the poisonous poinsettia and the poisonous mistletoe. Those are toxic plants, just for people to know. Very witchy thing to do. What was Beltane really a fire festival? There is a popular conception that Beltane was a fire festival, not in the least, reinforced by a famous early record of Beltane celebrations, found in the 10th century Irish glossary cum clerica resource book known as Sanas Chromaeic, Knowledge of Cormac, which deals with Irish words, concepts, and customs important to medieval religious functionaries and scholars of Irish orature and literature. Whitley Stokes' 1868 edition of John O'Donovan's translation contains the following two relevant entries. Bill from Bial, that is, an idol god, und undi Beltane, May Day, that is to say, or for example, Fire of Bel. Also the name Bella with Beauty and the Beast, guys, that makes me think of Bella also. And Beltane, May Day, Beltane, for example, Lucky Fire, for example, two fires which Druids used to make with great incantations. And they used to bring the cattle as a safeguard against the diseases of each year to those fires. They used to drive the cattle between them. And just think of all the Christmas caroling too, guys, because that's a form of incantation, right? These singing, these jingles they sing. The first example is very intriguing, as it states that Bill was an idol god and that Beltane means fire of Bel. This is slightly at odds with the definition given for Beltane as lucky fire. No connection is made of the Bible's Baal, however, this would come later. So you think of Billy Goat, how they say the devil has horns, so wow. So this is definitely another name, so many names. That's why knowing the name of the true God, really getting to know who you're worshiping, and just saying God is not enough anymore. Because there's just too many false idol gods being worshipped, and in the place of the real one, right? The second passage states that between the two Beltane fires, cattle were driven. The original text and its marginalia are by no means clear as to their exact meaning. It is not necessarily saying that Druids used to build a pair of bonfires between which cattle were led or driven. Evidence from copious historical and folkloric records confirms that Irish Beltane fires in England were held on May 1st as well as at Midsummer Day, with many traditions being interchangeable. William Robert Wilde noted that this in his immediate post-famine account of lost or dying Irish traditions. Irish Popular Superstitions, Dublin, 1852. As at the Midsummer Festival, so at the May fires, the boys of an adjoining bonfire often made a sudden descent and endeavored to carry off some of the fuel from a neighboring bonfire, and serious consequences have resulted therefrom. When all of it was over, it was no uncommon practice in Connaught, at least at the midsummer fire, to drive the cattle through the grisha, or warm ashes, as a form of purification and against witchcraft, fairies, moran, blackleg, loss of milk, and other misfortunes or diseases. Even the ashes, which remained bear a charm or virtue, and were sprinkled about like the red and yellow powders at the Hindu festival of Holi. That was very interesting, guys, because there's a connection. Sounds a lot like Hindu or voodoo. So all of these have very, very common. It's all just named differently. If people think that there's no midsummer festivals in America, I mean, just think of the 4th of July too, because just setting off fireworks and all that, that's like a form of it also. Like, they just modernize it. This is like really, really what has been, this is the real plague, right? The real deception brought over here. And it's not indigenous to America, okay? And a lot of people need to wake up, because this stuff is generating a lot of demonic energy. Wilde supposed, like many scholars of the 18th and 19th century, that May Day Beltane was the original festival, transferred to the Christian festival of Midsummer during the era of primary evangelism. That both occasions, May 1st and Midsummer, were ones at which the smoke and ambers from the celebratory fires were used in seining people, animals, fields, and properties might support this. But it is evident that midsummer celebrations were of an equal significance in traditional paganism across Europe. The interval period between La Beltane, May 1st, and Midsummer was one in which cattle were typically driven to summer pastures, which would otherwise be inhospitable and sparse during the winter months. The Old Middle Irish term Druidi or Drady or Draith in the source text of Sanas Chромaic is the genitive plural of Dre-oe, meaning magician, but equated generally with the Latin term Druides, used by Caesar and Pliny, etc. This was apparently a trend started by 16th/17th century Irish historian Seathron Seaton, death 1644, hereafter Geoffrey Keaton, whose great account of Irish history, Foras Fisa R. Erin, freely used the old Irish term Dre-oe, dry. He was effectively sealing a link in people's minds behind the medieval Irish accounts of their religious magical, you see that? Religious magical functionaries during the early medieval period, and those of the Continental and British Iron Age. Borrowing from sources such as Senius, Chромaic, and spicing things with a dash of invention, Keaton, who wrote in Irish, continued the suggestion in Senius Chромaic that Beltane was a celebration of the god Beel and fires. Here is a translation. So this is definitely the real British invasion, guys, that came to America. Screw the Beatles. This is the real British import people should have been worried about, which happened way before even they came in, right? This is a quote. Now when Duathil had put these 4 parts together and made them into one territory called Meath. He built therein 4 chief fortresses, that is, a fortress in each of the portions. Accordingly, he built Lachka in the portion of Munster which goes with Meath, and it was there the fire of, I'm not sure how to say that, guys, if you pronounce the T or the L. I'll say Takga was instituted, at which it was their custom to assemble and bring together the Druids of Ireland on the eve of Samhain to offer sacrifice to all the gods. People are sleeping on Samhain. That is where you get the Halloween from. So just because across the Atlantic we're over here in the Wizard of Oz and we like to make things sound like they're more innocent than they really are, this is what is really going on the highest levels. There's real sacrifices being made, and when you do it on the lower levels, you're still helping that same demonic entity, and no one cares about crap until it goes to their front door, and sometimes then they still don't care. That's how desensitized and wicked this world is, really, because they're still going to go out and buy their bull crap, right, and still do these evil days. Let's not even call them holly days anymore, because that is such a freaking trick bag. So they sacrificed, it tells you right there. It was at that fire they used to burn their victims, and it was of obligation under penalty of fine to quench the fires of Ireland on that night. And the men of Ireland were forbidden to kindle fires except from that fire. And for each fire that was kindled from in it, Ireland, the king of Munster received a tax of a screwball. Is that screwball? That's funny. Or 3 pence, since the land on which Talachka belongs to the part of Munster given to Meath. On the portion he had acquired from the province of Connaught, he built the 2nd fortress, namely Usneek, where a general meeting of the men of Ireland used to be held, which was called the Convention of Usneek. And it was at Beltane that this fair took place, at which it was their custom to exchange with one another their goods, their wares, and their valuables. They also used to offer sacrifice to the chief god they adored, who was called Beal, and it was their wont to light 2 fires in honor of Beal in every district in Ireland, and to drive a weakling of each species of cattle that were in the district between the 2 fires, as a preservative to shield them from all diseases during that year. And it is from that fire that was made in honor of Beal that the name of Beltane is given to the noble festival on which falls the day of the 2 apostles, namely Philip and James. Beltane, that is Beltane, or the fire of Beal. Foros Fisa or Aaron, Chapter 39, Translation Edition, The General History of Ireland, collected by the learned Geoffrey Keaton. Okay, you see how this is the source. But guys, this stuff is pretty deep. And the stuff is still going on. A god called Beal and Druids galore. His attitude towards fire ceremonies and Druid savvy opinions were probably shared by a strong Irish contingent of contemporary Roman Catholic and scholars exiled on the continent during the 16th and 17th centuries. The Scots had been first off of the mark in the new national history stakes with Hector Boss's Historia Gentis Scotorum 1527, which made free license with the history of the Druids, who both claim took up residence in the Isle of Man after the fall of Anglesey to the Romans in the 1st century and became educators of the early Scots monarchs. Yeah, a lot of these so-called kings, presidents, rulers of these nations, they always got some type of magician, witch, druid, somebody in the air talking that madness, using all kind of stuff. Like, how do you think they keep control? The Game of Thrones movie even showed people that, right, guys? How like that witch with the red hair, she was like all up in their ear all the time, and she was the one that was like directing the wars and stuff. Like, you'd be surprised. And all of this is like conflated with Christianity. You see how they, conflate it with these days and call it the Apostles' Days, saint this, saint that. These ideas would certainly have been known to the continental expatriate Jesuit historian Michael Alford. Michael Griffith's death, 1652, who appears to have been the first to have commented on the possible connection between the names Belinus and Baal in his Latin book Annals Ecclesia Britannica, finished in the 1650s but published posthumously, which means, of course, after his death at Liege in 1663. Alfred and Keaton were both influenced by William Camden's former use of formal history to assert national identity in a style less conjectural than Boas and his English counterpart and plagiarist Raphael Holinshed. Camden used numismatic evidence from old British Celtic coins to glean the names of Britain's earliest known kings in his famous works of British history published in the late 16th and early 17th centuries. And Alfred commented upon the names of these rulers depicted on Camden's coins, which on booklets and printed versions of Britannica, or Britannia. In particular, he enlarges upon the name Belinus and equates it with the Canaanite Baal of the Bible. There's your connection, guys. Canaanite, there's Baal. Baal comes in many forms, and you think this is not, you don't have different names today. You can go by Pan, Cernunnos, really. It just depends on what culture, right, or what source you're using. And a lot of these works, they're written in different languages, so you really got to find like an excerpt where they translate, so it helps, and this is the original right here. Scholars of the early modern era onwards were generally fascinated by the references to Druids in Caesar, Pliny, etc., and could be guaranteed to find traces of them in the medieval manuscript texts of the Irish. For Keaton, himself a Catholic priest, Druids could provide further prestige to Irish history, which could already unarguably lay claim to being a leading light in Christianizing Northern Europe. Had not the Irish converted almost seamlessly from paganism to Christianity? During the 16th and 17th century, English literature had sought to attack and demean the Irish, and Keaton provided a positive and Roman Catholic narrative which he hoped would equal that of Camden. He was writing in an era noted as much for its ahistory Druid craze as its efforts to establish some kind of stable orthodox history which promoted a notion of continuous progress from a barbaric, unchristian past into an enlightened Christian present. As a Roman Catholic, he was all too aware that Protestantism frequently derided Catholicism as backwards and superstitious. Druids appeared to early modern man's mind as the ideal bridge from savagery into enlightened Christianity, and the Irish manuscripts narratives, in particular the traditions of Patrick and the early Irish saints portrayed as taken over from the Druids, were the ultimate form by which this might be expressed. It's funny because Protestants always deride Catholicism, but they both have the same origin. It's just terrible. It just shows how clueless people are. And this, it conflates with the, many different names that we've seen too. You got Bel, Belus. This association of the indigenous god Bel or Belinus with the Assyrian or Canaanite god continued to exert increasing influence as time went on. In 1707, Martin Martin's A Description of the Western Isles of Scotland detailed his 1695 tour of his native Hebrides. In it he says the following: another god of the Britons were Belus or Belinus, which seems to have been the Assyrian god Bel or Belus, and probably from this pagan deity comes the Scots term of Beltan, the first day of May having its first rise from the custom practiced by the Druids in the Isles of extinguishing all the fires in the parish until the tithes were paid, and upon payment of them the fires were kindled in each family, and never till then. In those days malefactors were burnt between two fires. Hence, when they would express a man to be in a great strait, they say, he is between two fires of Bel, which in their language they express thus, Edir Dadin Vial or Bel. Some object that the Druids could not be in the Isles because no oaks grow there, to which I answer that in those days oaks did grow there, and to this day there be oaks growing in some of them, particularly in Sleat or Sleat, the most southern part of the Isle of Skye. The houses named after those Druids shall be described elsewhere. Martin was steadily enlarging the prevalent theme, linking Beltane with fire and fire gods. The Druid concept came to its fuller popular fruition in the writings of another Irish author, John Toland, who, a specimen of the critical history of the Celtic religion and learning, containing an account of the Druids, was published shortly after his death in 1722, to much acclaim in certain circles. Many 18th century scholars and gentry, perhaps egged on by John Toland's writings, increasingly enjoyed identifying themselves with the noble vision of ancient Druids, who offered a closer-to-home vision of their ancient elite forebears, favored over the previous desire to show sympathy with the great classical era Greek and Roman or biblical characters. After the custom of the day, they began to create the neo-Druidic fraternal orders. Guys, these are what these Freemasons are all about right now. The first Freemasonic groups, right? Neo-Druidic, which sought to establish some kind of continuity with the ancient mystical past of non-Roman pre-Christian Europe. Unfortunately, in doing so, they were also effectively censoring themselves from deviating from group-held opinions on what had really been going on among the ancient Celts. These scholars, with a love of all things Druidic, were often, like Heathen, of a religious background, literacy being greatest among the clergy. If not, they were steeped in the religious cultures of Protestant and Roman Catholic Christianity. For this reason, they tended to attempt to fuse the contending interest in the history of ancient paganism with the biblical narratives. They thus developed in the 17th and 18th century a popular theory that Beltane was a remnant of a festival worshiping the Canaanite Phoenician god Baal or Bel, somehow transplanted to Britain by presumably Phoenicians in dim and dusty unknowable antiquity. This stuff is like so deep, guys. I'm going to leave it there because this is quite, this is quite the read, as you can see. But they're all conflated, guys. All of these names of these entities, Celtic, this Celtic god, a lot of different names. Everyone is all about being a ghoulie ghoul like that. They go into the coins too, so I can go into it a little bit more. Yeah, this is how everybody wants to look now. I wonder if they show, because this was really, it's just too extensive. This is a very interesting picture because it shows, vampires, God, they have all of this folklore. This is a Roman era mosaic of a happy household spirit, a lair, protected from sharp and venomous things by the apotropaic eye symbol. Oh boy. This is where you get a lot of this modern stuff. And, it says right here, they say the agents of evil in the Christian worldview, where the demons were conducting the will of higher or lower spiritual agents as fallen angels. They shared the sins of Lucifer. This concordance with fairies is obvious, and folk narratives often reinforce it by claiming fairies and elves to be fallen angels in line with Christian doctrine. So there are parallels. And then, but yet, you'll have these Christians still doing their damn Christmas and everything else. You think they care? I've been trying to say all of this stuff, we could definitely go into more of it because there's more names that come up. Says the implicit Beltane nature and the secret blacksmith. This was interesting. The implicit spiritual idea of blacksmiths in the pagan world was an expression of the reforging of nature each year as part of the annual cycle in the temperate regions of Atlantic Europe. This was so explicit that it became a core part of the religion and was celebrated through a cycle of annual festivals personifying this process, which all of these festivals today, nothing different. It was also an important part of the mythos of Southern Europe and was also a key part of the mysteries of Eleusis, Orphism, and the Dionysiac rites of ancient Greco-Roman religion. As with the southern forms of paganism, the northern forms portrayed the year as the life cycle of a woman, the producer guardian of developing life in human continuity. As each year progressed, so she aged, only to be born again after each final death. I just thought it was weird because you got the Beltane and they conflate it, this goes to show what was going on prior, and Julius Caesar and all them, and there were very notable people who were very influenced by this. Okay, so this is like an actual source. If you want to read all of its entirety, I can put this and this together because, man, the connections I was making. And I gotta go soon, but just to show, the history of Saturnalia, that's what I'm talking about when I'm like, what are you talking about, Saturn? Yeah, well, Saturnalia was practiced around Christmas time, around the same time. So if you go to history.com, ancient Rome, of course it's going to make me subscribe. Are you going to make me subscribe? Oh, good. So it says, what is Saturnalia? So Saturnalia is held in, it's around the same time, guys. In mid-December is an ancient Roman pagan festival honoring the agricultural god Saturn. Saturnalia celebrations are the source of many of the traditions we now associate with Christmas. There you go. Saturnalia, the most popular holiday on the ancient Roman calendar. So kind of funny how we're still practicing these ancient Roman, so it's still under that same system, right? And so derived from older farming related rituals of midwinter and the winter solstice, especially the practice of offering gifts or sacrifices to the gods during the winter sowing season. Do not be deceived. There will be many deaths, guys. Do not be deceived, because we've seen this whole story, right? With these, this stuff is real. I try to go into it with people. Don't want to make these videos so long. But like, even with the name correlations, you got the movie Kill Bill. You got the Billy Goat. All these connections I found so interesting. And people, you try to wake them up. You try to tell them what they're doing is evil, but they think, oh, whatever I was taught was right. They don't, that's like saying your parents can't make mistakes. Of course they can. We've been under a great deception. America is a great deception. That's why they push it in the schools and stuff, and people don't think that we're in one big religion. Well, I thought, church and state wasn't supposed to mix. But they have you doing this stuff in school, they have you pledging to the flag, they're pushing all these ideologies. How about if, you come from a tradition that doesn't partake in that? Do you get days off of work for that? Does your employer honor that? No. But they'll have you, take off their pagan holidays, which you see them all doing collectively. They'll shut their businesses down. Sometimes they pay the employees a bonus. Sometimes they don't, And, this Christmas parade, people are going to these parades, these feasts. They're very reminiscent of what was done in ancient times, guys. Very reminiscent. We have a lot of British influence in America, do we not? And it's all about this fire. Really creepy. I always wondered what this was all about. It's right near the Providence Place Mall. And I just, you could just tell, people are in awe or whatever. So it's like, not that they're worshiping the fire itself, the element, it's who it represents, right? Belle makes you think of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yeah, they name them all like the same names. And they conflate it too with like Apollo and stuff. Like there are different names for these entities. And it tells you right here, Belinus, so keep that in mind, is conflating. Britannia is another name for Britain, right? And so on the coins it was shown, and even now with the coins in America, when you got like the so-called Statue of Liberty and all that stuff, I mean, that is a religion in itself. It's a false idol. It's a deity to these people. And so you got this, and there's a lot of blood being shed here too. They think that, oh, America is so innocent. Well, abortion's still legal, innocent blood still being shed, poor countries or whatever, undeveloped countries as they call it, still being invaded, right? It's still so much evil being done in the name of, holiness and stuff. And these entities are one and the same. Psalmist, because you got that damn swirl. I mean, when I seen that guy in the swirl, I was just bringing up all this stuff because it's like they want to put you to sleep. I didn't realize that also too, with this entity having the horns like that and then having this swirl. So I just found this to be so interesting. I even saw an even more creepy version. I can't find it now, that's okay, but he's wearing the red. Very, very, very close. Very close. You got your Krampus, they know what's going on. They know what time it is overseas. But we've become so, this could be like another Saturn because he got that. And people think, oh, what's wrong with Saturn too? Well, he's a very evil entity. They don't show you Santa Claus like eating these kids up, right? And what's really going on with all these missing children. Eating his children, or wanted to come up on his own. There's many statues too. And so when people say, oh, I can't believe parades, children are getting hurt, and this and that, you think these people care about children? And these same people who like act like they want to take on someone else's cause, right? Like they love appropriating other causes. Like they're all about abortion themselves, though. They'll be the same people who think it's okay to murder babies. And teaching our children to love this entity. Look, he's eating, and cannibalism is on the rise, guys. And Christians back in the day had a like a reputation for being cannibals. Because you're talking about eating the blood, eating the flesh, drinking Jesus's blood. What do you think you freaking sound like? A damn zombie, a damn ghoulie ghoul. Like, I was deceived for many, many years, but you gotta wake up sometime. You know, I'm just so blessed to be awake, not waste my energy, time. And for anybody who's still doing it, don't act like it's all like holy and stress free. I would see people like literally lose their mind if they didn't get like what they thought they were going to get on Christmas, and they can be as wicked as you can imagine. Okay, I guess on the coins too, but there was one that he also was wearing a crown that looked like the Statue of Liberty, Belinus. But of course I lose it now, of course. Celtic gods, but this goes back to the Celtic folklore. I can't find it anymore, but he had like rays. So, I mean, there are different depictions depending on the culture, guys, depending on, you know, what you're looking at. But, you know, Baal, and which would require sacrifice and blood, really evil entity, cannot save your soul at the end of all this, turns people into a damn sellout, you know, and people sell out in a lot of different ways. Sacrifice is done. You'd be surprised who the real power is over these hospitals, these schools, these churches, these government institutions. Just look at their art, look at their idols, look at their practices. They're pushing these ancient, everyone wants to act like they're so advanced, like we're so evolved, but look at these practices still being done, old school. You know, this is very, very ritualistic, and it's all synchronized around the same time. Have you noticed that? All synchronized. Come on. Is it because people people just do things out of habit? It goes to show, like, people are just doing things automatic, like a robot. Like, right, wrong, broke, rich, don't matter. Like, what background they come from, they're still doing this fake, this make-believe tradition, which is real, but their concept of it is fake. They think it's so innocent. You're just deceiving yourself, because while you're partaking, at the same time, people at the highest levels who know who the true God of these so-called unholy days are, they're doing the real blood sacrifices. Like, you're only doing it on a minor level, and you're not even getting the so-called blessings from this dark lord, the earthly blessings, even though they're going to pay dearly in other ways, because the real person to fear is the God of all gods, the God who is against all of this stuff. It's literally like him against the world, okay? Because the world's worshiping the dragon, worshiping these fallen entities, and they're getting more real with it, guys, because you got that new movie out with the elves and stuff. They're starting to show you these entities are no damn joke. Like, they're not as they're doing I can see it. I used to watch that evil show. See, when I was like 9, 10 years old, I had the stupid elf sneakers. So totally, just deceived, guys. Elf eating the cat. Remember, he used to eat cats? That is really weird. That is weird. Oh, there was a statue I just landed on. You see that? You see that? The stuff, So yeah, this is your Santa Claus. You can think he's all fat because he's been eating all these kids. That's why he's all fat, maybe, right? Really, really creepy, guys. But these kind of rituals won't end. You heard it from me first. I mean, it's just going to be a daily occurrence all the way up to Saturnalia Eve to midnight. Why do you think the Catholics have a midnight mass, guys? Who knows what's going on at that church right under your feet while you're doing that? Imagine, because they already know that having a lot of people in one spot generates energy. If anyone saw like the cube in Mecca, how people just go around and around and around. And if you look up moshing, they even tell you that you generate like a vortex. You know, you generate so much energy, guys. So just really, really be careful out there. I'm going to cut this short. If, I'm going to do a follow-up one that has to do with the elves. And, are they really as innocent? Because, they push the elf on the shelf. I mean, we've become so lost, guys. We've become like the Twilight zoned out generation. I put a vid on BIT CHUTE talking about that. Like, everyone's so medicated, everyone's all swirled up, right? They've taken in too much propaganda, they've drinking too much of the Kool-Aid, and they're just too compromised to be fixed, because you can show them all the evidence and they're still gonna sacrifice their children spiritually to these evil entities, and then wonder why their children are going to have so much problems. And for all the science people out there, you're not any better, because you're worshiping entities. Can't you tell by the names what they are really? I mean, you really... And the way they're so obsessed with it, with their NASA shirts, they're so proud. It's like... it's a sucker born every day. It's a sucker born every day. Thank you so much for watching my Dia Dash 2.0. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you soon.